or on? Okay, great. Okay, good evening. I would like to call to order this March 7, 2022 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all board members are present and participating remotely. Under the guidelines for attending board meetings, a prohibition on in-person public meetings remains in place, but there's an exemption for meetings that can comply with the miscellaneous venues guidance. That guidance states that boards may host in-person meetings provided that all applicable face covering requirements are followed, and those requirements remain in place today. The board values public participation and engagements in its meetings and will continue to comply with all laws related to the Open Public Meetings Act and all current emergency requirements for COVID-19. If those requirements cannot be met, the board must hold its meetings remotely, and due to non-compliance at prior board meetings, the board is determined to hold its meetings remotely while that guidance remains in place. Those requirements remain in place. The board will notify the public of the location of its meetings through the meetings tab on board docs, and all future meetings will be updated when we return to in-person meetings. We will not be doing this forever. Board meetings, study sessions, and special board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the district's website. If you are unable to live stream the meeting, you may call to listen. That phone number is 425-936-2813. The conference ID is 37127. You're also welcome to email the board. Our email addresses are posted on the district's website, and you can email all board members by emailing the email address boardmembers@lwsd.org. I will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
And I actually, before we, I just want to note for the record for all board members that what was the third item on the non-consent agenda tonight was a review of the board's report for the monitoring reports from the last meetings. That agenda item has been pushed to the next meeting because that report has not been finished yet and circulated. So that will be at the next meeting. So that is not on the agenda. It is not on the agenda for tonight. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Okay, it's been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Stewart that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. The first item on the agenda tonight is a recognition of our National Board Certified Teachers. Dr. Holman, can you get us started, please?
Absolutely. And so tonight, Associate Superintendent Mike Van Orden is here to share with the board and to recognize our teachers that have gone through initial certification and renewal of their national boards. I just want to take a moment to recognize that's a difficult process in typical times, but for those that completed that in the midst of transitioning to remote teaching and learning, transitioning to really a new framework for teaching during COVID, just want to recognize all of their hard work and effort. So excited to recognize our staff that went through that process and completed that again. So Mike?
Yeah, so what an honor it is to recognize our nationally board certified teachers. Also wanted to acknowledge Emily Young, our Director of Professional Learning, and her team who support our national board certified teachers and the process they go through, which is, as Dr. Holman mentioned, a very heavy lift and probably more so these past few years. So just as you may recall from past presentations, so national board certification really is a process that teachers go through that really sets a pretty high bar. And so our teachers have to participate in an ongoing assessment where they submit classroom video recordings, portfolios and student work, written reflections of the work that they're doing in class, and then also complete content knowledge tests. And this is all happening while they're instructing. And so the goal is really, not only are you demonstrating your competence, but you're also learning and growing as you're doing the work. And so it really is a wonderful process that our teachers participate in. And as they make it through, it really is also an acknowledgement of their incredible competence and skill that they've demonstrated through the process. As we mentioned, there's some standards that go with it, and these range from everything from teachers being committed to student learning, being responsible for managing all of the different variables that go on in a classroom, thinking about their practices and reflecting on their practice, and being part of a larger community. And so earlier in the study session, for example, I mentioned this idea of being part of a grade level team where you're looking at student data and working together to improve outcomes for kids. And so our teachers really do need to be part of a larger community as they're doing the work and demonstrating competence for national boards. We wanted to just take a few moments to call out our folks who are receiving national boards for the first time. And as Dr. Holman mentioned, given COVID this year, probably a few less than we would typically have. But again, real hats off to these folks. So Anna Joyce at Lake Washington High School, Shauna Korshvan at Eastlake High School, Kristen McLeod at IMS, and Colin Tracy at Eastlake. And then we have a number of teachers that are doing renewal, and I remember many of these from their first year when they were being recognized for that first year. And so Ines Bergman, Jessica Butterfield, Peter Chang, Sue Chin, Leslie Cordell, Aaron Fleshman, Casey Gehring, Carrie Goodrich, Maria Gutierrez, Susan Hart, Angela Casper, and Catherine McCurry. And then we also have Patrick Monson, Megan Palmer, Daniel Pudwill, Shauna Sandstrom, Melissa Scott, Brian Scott, Sarah Skipworth, Dylan Slatton, Amy Teal, Dr. Melissa Renchi, and Ashley Siddell. So here are our folks. Oops, get their pictures up. And when we're back in person, as Eric mentioned, in coming years, we typically have these folks join us too, so we can give them a big round of applause in person. But since we are remote, we thought this would count for tonight. So again, just can't express enough how much we appreciate our National Board Certified teachers and all of our teachers for their incredible work these past years to make sure students continue to learn and thrive in this very challenging time. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you to all our teachers who went through that process during the last year. Extraordinary. Here we got, there we go, the virtual applause. The next item on our agenda is a proclamation declaring the week of March 14 through 18 Educational Support Professionals Week. I will ask that Director Stewart read the proclamation.
Okay. Whereas education support professionals are involved in nearly every aspect of education, including maintaining school buildings and grounds, providing secretarial and clerical assistance, preparing and serving meals, providing safe transportation, keeping school facilities clean and orderly, assisting in the classroom, providing a secure and healthy environment, and many other specialized services. And whereas education support professionals are instrumental in fulfilling the state's responsibility to educate all students, and whereas these dedicated individuals deserve recognition and thanks for the outstanding work they are doing for students enrolled in the Lake Washington School District, and whereas by supporting the learning environment, education support professionals are crucial partners with teachers, parents, administrators, and school boards in public schools. And whereas there are approximately 1,450 classified school employees working with and helping the children in Lake Washington School District, therefore, the Board of Directors do hereby proclaim March 14 through March 18, 2022 as Education Support Professionals Week.
Great. Thank you, Director Stewart. The next item on the agenda for tonight is public comment. The board welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board and encourages community engagement. We dedicate 30 minutes at our meetings to hear from the public during a public comment period. There are currently 2 ways to submit public comment. The first is in writing. To do so, please email Teresa Harding at the email address tharding@lwsd.org by 3 p.m. on the date of the board meeting. Those written comments are compiled, distributed to the board, and posted on the district's website. Due to time constraint, not all the individuals that submit public comment will have their statements read aloud. In addition, you may provide televised public comment. To do that, please also email Teresa Harding by 1 p.m. on the date of the board meeting. You will then share your comments, which are recorded and televised. We have a number of folks signed up tonight, so I just want to remind everyone that we limit public comment to 3 minutes per person. I will be timing, and unfortunately I'll have to cut you off at 3 minutes so that we can get through everyone tonight. You are asked to turn your camera and microphone on and speak for the designated 3 minutes. After your public comment has concluded, it is requested that you exit the Microsoft Teams meeting and continue watching the live stream broadcast through the district's website if you're interested in viewing the meeting. We have, as I mentioned, 12 people signed up for public comment tonight. The first person I have signed up is Nicole Steinbach.
Hello, can you hear me and see me?
Just fine.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I joined you during our heat wave last June to thank you for pivoting to in-person school, and thanks again, by the way, and to cheer you on to make secondary school start times later. It's been 8 months. I'm now in a toque to stay warm, and I haven't heard an update, so I'm back. The only thing that I miss about remote school was that my boys could sleep later. The early start times this year have been a struggle. Their bodies and brains should be sleeping, but I need to wake them up each day. Each of my boys have missed school a few times because they were not ready to wake up, and they've occasionally had a nap, and this is pretty unexpected because they're 12 and 14. They've also stopped taking the school bus to school. Instead, we drive them so they can get an extra half an hour of sleep. It's not good for traffic in Sammamish, and it's also not good for the environment, but we've made that trade-off because it's good for their developing brains. It's not just my family. As I'm sure you're aware, there are numerous studies that show the many benefits of having a later secondary school start time. These include better mental and physical health, less depression, better grades, increased focus during class, less tardiness, and less drowsy driving. These benefits are actually listed in the report, Benchmarking High School Start Times, that Lake Washington School District commissioned and paid for from Hanover Research in 2015. So we paid for this research 7 years ago, and we haven't communicated a plan to address it. I do appreciate that there are challenges to having later secondary start times, but the benefits to our students are definitely worth overcoming them. And with the quick pivot to in-person school last year and the switching between remote and in-person this year when it was needed, you've proven you can overcome challenges for the benefit of our students. And you've done it once or twice, and I know you guys can do it again. So I'm here tonight asking again for later secondary school start times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbach. Next we have signed up is Teresa Lane.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Just fine.
Okay. All right. Hi, good evening, Dr. Holman and Lake Washington School Board Directors. My name is Teresa Lane. My husband and I have 2 children in Lake Washington School District. The end of the mask mandates for school seems to be a moving target. I appreciated the Pathway Forward email last Friday from Dr. Holman that seems to be committed to masks being made optional as of March 12th. I am requesting that that does not change as there seems to be multiple forces at play. I'm going to speak about ending mask mandates in schools on March 12th permanently and why that needs to happen. First off, majority of kids have already had COVID. Secondly, mask mandates violate 5 of the amendments of the United States Bill of Rights. Mask mandates violate the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. Young people use nonverbal communication even more than adults. Kids cannot freely express themselves when facial expressions are hidden behind a mask and speaking is muffled. Many learning and social opportunities are lost because they can no longer see facial cues from teachers and peers. Mask mandates violate the Fourth Amendment, which is unlawful seizure. The Fourth Amendment protects bodily and personal integrity. Being forced to wear a mask is a partial seizure of one's body. Mask mandates violate the Fifth Amendment, which is due process. Due process means fair treatment. Forcing anyone, especially children, to wear a mask is not fair treatment. Mask mandates violate the Ninth Amendment, fundamental right to liberty. Mask mandates violate the 14th Amendment, equal protection, due process, and fundamental rights. Decisions like mask mandates should be made by the legislature, not by the executive branch, because rule by decree is a hallmark of dictatorship. Mandates created in the state of emergency should be based on the least restrictive means and narrowly tailored standards for constitutional rights and should be temporary. This state of emergency has gone on for 2 years with no end in sight. Washington is one of only 12 states and 7 countries that have mandated young children to wear masks. Mask mandates damage children's health and well-being, their liberty, autonomy, and security, and serve no valid medical or scientific purpose. Young people are at low risk for COVID-related illness and have no legal or political ability to resist the draconian measures imposed on them. Currently, for young people, COVID-19 is less dangerous than most flus. Irrational fear has caused governments to impose restrictions on young people's freedoms. Masks cause physical, psychological, and sociological harm to children. We strongly request that you end mask mandates permanently on March 12th. Thank you for your time and attention.
Okay, next I have signed up is, and there we are, Keith Lane.
Hi, hello. Hi, I'm Keith Lane. I'm obviously Teresa's husband. We have 2 students in the Lake Washington School District. Today I'm speaking on behalf of the Washington Parents Alliance. At the start of this year, a grassroots movement of parents across the state submitted identical public disclosure requests, PDRs, to over 60 school districts. It has become apparent that a majority of the school board members are not as educated concerning the laws that govern them as we are. Perhaps we can learn together. Type RCW 28A into any search engine and begin the journey. As we shared these documents to board members, we were met with multiple reactions. Many were grateful for the efforts parents were making to help them find information from state agencies that they were also curious about. They appreciated that we were bringing attention to laws that schools might be violating. Other board members reacted with confusion, and others were not aware of the recent laws passed or amended that legally compelled them to attend WASDA training that they may or may not agree with. Every state in the union has laws on informed consent, which outlines the medical doctors must inform a patient of risks and benefits of any medical product or device and receive a consent to administer the drug or device without coercion. How many people were unlawfully compelled to provide a medical diagnosis to get a mask exemption? How many were denied a mask exemption after getting a doctor's note? Page 3 of the Section 504 and Students with Disabilities PDF found on the website for Washington Office of Superintendents of Public Instruction clearly states that a school cannot require a parent to provide a medical diagnosis to evaluate a student, yet Seattle School District requires a medical diagnosis on their mask exemption forms. We ask that you stop mask requirements now. Thank you.
Okay, next I have signed up Arthur Weiner.
Good evening, Lake Washington School Board members, Dr. Holman. My name's Arthur Weiner. My wife and I have 3 children in the Lake Washington School District in 3 different schools. I'm here in front of the Lake Washington Resource Center once again asking you, why can't you hold your meetings in public? Other government bodies in this same city are doing so. It doesn't make any sense. My second point this evening is I listened to the study session tonight, and I heard several times that underrepresented voices need to be amplified. That's quite interesting, actually, considering how this board advances a position to lower, to create an amendment to lower the voting requirement to a simple majority for bonds. That position tramples minority opinion. So I'm quite confused how you champion minority opinion and trample minority opinion all at the same time. And lastly, this evening, I'm here to support ending mask mandates, make them optional for families. What you have done to our students is incredibly detrimental. You know, I listened just to the beginning of the board meeting, and I find it really frustrating that you all chuckle about how difficult the last 2 years have been. Oh, there'd be more people who would have had these certifications if we didn't have all these COVID challenges. You all created these challenges. You're the reason we're in this position. Stand up for the public. Stand up for individuals. Reject the mask mandates. Reject the vaccine mandates that research shows are a real possibility in our state. Stand up for freedom. Reject these things. You are the representatives of the public in the school system. Do right by us. We vote. We hear you loud and clear. We vote. Thank you very much. Good night.
Next we have signed up is Dr. Ben Lynch.
Hey, good evening all. I'm going to keep it really simple and just say that I'm hearing through the grapevine, I don't know if it's right or not, that perhaps you guys are considering extending the masks despite what Governor Inslee and the Washington Department of Health have stated to end the mask mandates coming very soon. And CDC has already been talking about it. And my kid is super excited about it. And he's like, Dad, am I going to be able to get the mask taken off my face here soon? I said, yeah, you're damn right. You're going to be able to get that thing off your face. And he goes, well, I really don't want it back on. Are they going to put it back on? I said, no, we're going to do everything we can to prevent that from happening. Look, masks have really hurt our kids. The CDC has reduced the level of competency in our children for new words. And that is because masks have been covering their faces. And it's just shocking. So in a previous board meeting, you said that you're going to follow Department of Health guidelines. Well, Department of Health guidelines says masks are no longer needed. So let's do that. Thank you.
Eric, you're muted.
Oh, good, because I butchered your name, Miss Babayan. Babayan.
That's okay.
So I was apologizing for doing it, and no one heard me do it either. But your turn. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everybody, for your service and your time and for giving to our families and our children. I joined tonight because mine is the story of wanting freedom and wanting freedom of choice. Last time I joined, I shared my story, and this time I'd like to add to that story by sharing my great-grandparents' story, who ran away from Armenia during the Turkish-Armenian genocide. Because nobody spoke up, because nobody stood up, most of my family was massacred and made to walk many, many days to Iraq. And then from Iraq, they finally came to Iran, where we found freedom, where we found voice, where we found choice. And then you heard my story last time. I won't bore you again with Iran's transition from the king leaving to the Khomeini and Ayatollahs taking over, and how that's turned out, as you can all see. We came to America. And the best part of this country that I have come to love is that I believe that dream that my great-grandparents had for freedom, for choice, for ability to choose, is in this land. This is the land. There is a song, and I'm sorry that I'm going to butcher it, but it says, I'm proud to be in America where I know I'm free. And I want this for my children. My husband and I want this for our kids. Without America being free, there's no place else to go. So please, I plead with you and I beg of you to leave a legacy. Speak up. Don't let what happened with Armenia and Turkey and Armenians in Iran happen again here, where people's choices slowly get taken away and their freedom get crushed. Please leave a legacy of choice and freedom. Thank you very much for your time and for all the hard work you put in. We appreciate you. God bless you all.
Thank you for coming tonight. Next we have signed up is Tyler Litzenberger.
Hey there, good evening. You hear me okay? Hey, appreciate your time this evening. I wanted to also congratulate Queen Elizabeth for making a full COVID recovery, and she's 95. That means that our kids at their age can certainly make a full recovery, which my two kids have done already. So they have natural immunity. Natural immunity doesn't really get talked about. There's a lot of things with this COVID deal that hasn't been talked about, and it's creating obviously a significant amount of frustration amongst us parents. The general lack of transparency with our ability to have a forum is unacceptable. Our kids do not need to be masked. The parents or the teachers are not in an age group either where they need to be masked. And our kids I can't speak for other parents and their kids as teachers, but the teachers of our kids are frustrated beyond belief, and they want the masking to end as well. There's been $135 billion in the COVID relief plan that was sent to school districts nationally. I've asked the question of where that money has gone within Lake Washington School District for improving airflow through schools, and I've never gotten an answer. The problem is when we're told that we're talking to the wrong group, that we need to go talk to the health department, the state health department, whichever health official it is, and then literally the next day or the next week we read about a school district elsewhere in Washington State that has made a unilateral decision to unmask their kids. We know we're being lied to, and so it's creating a sense of a complete lack of trust. And I mean, we should have trust in our school board and our school officials and our superintendents. When we're told that there's just as many parents that are for masking as there's not masking, but yet they don't show up to these meetings and they don't speak, that just goes to the lack of trust that we have as parents. The masking needs to end. With the transparency needs to increase. So if we want to have adult conversations about COVID, let's have adult conversations about COVID, but let's stop targeting our kids. Thanks.
Okay, next I have signed up is Angela Pfeiffer.
Hello. And Eric, I have Stephanie here speaking next. So we'll just turn the phone over to her when it's her time, okay?
Okay.
All right. Hi, I'm Angela Pfeiffer. I'm a healthcare provider in Kirkland for the last 17 years, and I have a child in Lake Washington School District. So on February 11th of this year, the CDC published a study, Effectiveness of Face Masks or Respiratory Use in Indoor Public Settings for Prevention of SARS-CoV-2 Infection. Slide 1, please. First, this is an observational study, and from this, we cannot claim any cause and effect. Are my slides up, please? Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hold on. I don't know if you have slides, but I'm not seeing anything. So
yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Pfeiffer, I paused your time on here too.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Back it up. Back it up. Let me know when they're up.
Yeah, I'll let you know when we're seeing it, but I'm not right now. Oh, no problem. Excuse me. That's okay. We're all fine. You know, actually, I think I'll do it, Ms. Pfeiffer, if it's okay. I'm going to go to the next person while we're getting this sorted out, and then I'll come back to you, and we'll. Is that okay?
Do Stephanie first. Yep, Stephanie's right here. Hello.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All right.
And so sorry, Stephanie Lekovin. Lekovin.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep. All right. Thanks. So thank you to all of you for your service to our community and for the opportunity for all of us to speak tonight. My name is Stephanie Lekovin, and I'm the parent of 2 students in our district. Angela and I are in the car right now. We're waiting to go to Climate Pledge Arena for the Imagine Dragons concert with about 17,000 other people, some of whom are vaccinated, some who aren't. After this Saturday, no one will have to wear a mask to go to concerts, restaurants, grocery stores, and other indoor venues either. The world is opening up again. It's time. I'm speaking to you today to respectfully ask that you follow Governor Inslee's lead to end vaccine and mask mandates around COVID that are outdated, irrelevant, and harmful to students. I would like to see 2 things. Number 1, I'd like to see an immediate end to our school district's requirement for volunteers and staff to be vaccinated to enter schools, since we're now at the endemic stage of this virus. So many of us, regardless of vaccination status, have had COVID. And since vaccination does not prevent transmission of Omicron, requiring a COVID vaccine to enter school is complete theater. My son's school is a choice school that is struggling from a lack of volunteers due to this mandate. There are quite a few of us who would gladly fill that need, but we're not even allowed to volunteer outside. It's ridiculous. The second thing is I'd like to see an end to the mask mandate in schools that coincides with the governor's directive, which is by this Saturday, March 12th. Regarding the second request, I'm not asking that you do anything that almost everyone else is doing. Even in New York City, masks in schools will be optional starting today. And Oregon and California are set to end their mask mandates for schools this Saturday. So why did Seattle Public Schools just extend its mask mandate until May? It's because the school district, my understanding at least, is because in that school district, the teachers union is calling the shots. They are arguing that mask requirements bring a sense of normalcy, quote unquote, to children. If you are also being pressured by the teachers union, please do not succumb. Teachers who are still nervous about contracting COVID can wear a well-fitted N95 mask all day, every day, if they so choose. They can wear it in their car. They can wear it while they're walking down the street by themselves. I don't really care. I do care about my children having the right to breathe fresh air and see the faces of other kids and adults. That is normal. If other students are still nervous and want to wear an N95 mask or even a dirty cloth mask that provides no actual protection but makes them feel more secure, they have that right. But their fear should not dictate your policy. Please vote tonight to unmask our kids by this Saturday and to allow unvaccinated adults back into the schools. Thanks so much.
Teresa, have we had any luck with the PowerPoint? And it looks like, oh, there we are. Great.
There we go.
Okay, one moment.
So I just had one sentence before. Can I just start over?
Please.
Okay, thank you very much. There we go. All right, so I'm Angela Pfeiffer. Introduced myself. Hopefully we all connected that. So to start again, on February 11th of this year, the CDC published a study, The Effectiveness of Face Mask or Respiratory Use in Indoor Public Settings for Prevention of SARS-CoV-2 Infection. And that's the slide we're looking at. This is an observational study. From this, we cannot claim any cause and effect. We can simply note that this is an observation, and from this info, then we can design randomized control studies that we can actually confirm cause and effect. So at first glance, the graphic that you're looking at that was put out by the CDC appears to show cloth masks reducing the risk of COVID by 56%. Slide 2, please. If you look closely, there's a pound sign next to the cloth masks with a notation that it's not statistically significant, which means the observational study did not show that cloth masks were any different than no mask, and that any observed finding was due to chance. So you'll see the pound sign on that slide. Slide 3, please. From this, the Seattle Times published an article titled How to Prolong the Life of Your N95 Mask and created their graph, but they did not note that the results were not statistically significant. So they pulled from the same exact study, and then they added a statement that is, quote, 56% less likely to contract the coronavirus, end quote. So I see this kind of info being pushed out along newspapers and social media and everywhere, and this is how misinformation is being spread, and the CDC is to blame for this. It is information like this that is perpetuating the polarizing views of parents and teachers alike. By publishing this graphic, the CDC is spreading misinformation, and they're letting down the group of people that really need the protection from the virus. And no, it's not the children. It's people 65 and older and people that have 4 or more comorbidities. And they're thinking, great, I'm going to wear this cloth mask because I'm going to reduce my chance of getting COVID by over 50%. And it's complete lies. In class last week, my middle schooler's teacher pulled up COVID case rates and daily death rates on slides. And they stated that they don't agree with the CDC removing masks right now, and that the students all need to think long and hard on their decision to remove their mask on March 12th, and that they need to think of the community members and not spreading this to their community. My child inferred that last statement was inferring that if it spreads to immunocompromised people and those people died, that the children were responsible for their death. And this is complete bullshit. This speaks to the deeper issue here. This teacher's not a healthcare provider, and yet they're dispensing medical advice since a mask is medical device. And they're causing undue fear and anxiety, and they're coercing these kids to fit their agenda. So even though I don't agree with the policies of Inslee, the DOH, and the CDC to date, you have all repeatedly stated that you're following these guidelines. They're now stating these masks can be optional, and yet now we have teachers expressing their will on our children and teachers union trying to hold our schools hostage. Slide 4, please.
Ms. Piper, we're a little over 3 minutes now. If you could just wrap it up, please.
I'd love to. Thank you very much. Slide 4. During the winter Omicron wave and subsequent decline, states with mask mandates generally have done worse than those without a mandate, and cases declined at the exact same time regardless. There's absolutely no legitimate data-based argument to justify mask mandates. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both, and thank you for your flexibility. Next, I have Ramsey Rammerman. Okay, thank you, Teresa.
Good evening. My name is Ramsey Rammerman. I'm the father of a middle school student in this district, and I'm here tonight to again urge the board to vote to lift the mask mandates no later than March 12th. It's the third time I've come before this board to ask the board to lift the mask mandate. In response to my first request, the board said that it wasn't going to listen to parents who disagreed with the Department of Health. In response to my second request and the request of other parents, the board said that the decision was out of its hands. The board was required to follow the guidance of the Department of Health, and the opinion of parents was not even a parameter that the board would even consider when looking at mask mandates. Next slide, please. Since my last appearance, the health community has changed its guidance, and the CDC has now rescinded its recommendation for indoor masking in King County. Next slide, please. The Department of Health has set March 12th as the date that mask mandates at schools should end. Thus, the CDC and the Department of Health both agree that there's no scientific basis for mask mandates after March 12th. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, the teachers union is now pressuring the district to keep the mask mandates in place until May 1st. But the union's very own letter makes it clear that this request is based on widespread ignorance of the science and the fact that the teachers are afraid and dependent on masks. Next slide, please. The same letter from the union, however, acknowledges that mask mandates have harmed our children by causing them to have anxiety when they're around unmasked persons. Next slide, please. Our Supreme Court recognized in the McCleary decision that this board's paramount duty is to provide students with the opportunity to become responsible citizens so that they can enjoy productive and satisfying lives. This board is failing that duty when students are suffering from anxiety simply because they are around unmasked persons. Next slide, please. The actual scientific data does not justify this failure. That's why the European CDC and departments of health in some of the biggest states in this country have advised against mask mandates in schools for this entire school year. Lake Washington School District is the second largest school district in this state, and it could have influenced state policy on mask mandates. But instead, you have chosen to claim that you're powerless, that you had to follow the Department of Health, and you don't care what parents think what's best for their own children in masks. If you were to now turn around and ignore the Department of Health based on unscientific, fear-based opinions of teachers' unions and keep the mask mandate in place after March 12th, you'll be sending a clear message to the parents in this district that you're certainly willing to ignore the Department of Health, but only to placate teachers, not when it would protect the health and well-being of our students in this district. Thus, tonight, I urge you to do the right thing and vote tonight to end the mask mandates no later than March 12th. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have signed up is Jennifer Zentz.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, and hear you.
Hi, thank you so much for taking your time to hear all of us. And also thank you for taking your personal time to complete public service for all of us. You are inspiring a lot of us to get involved, so thank you. I'm a social studies teacher and was a substitute in the district last year when we went back in person. And I was really excited to do that. I'm hoping that all of this is a moot issue because the board is not considering extending the mask mandate. But just in case, I want to voice my opinion. I have 3 kids in Lake Washington School District Elementary School up at Ben Franklin Elementary. I have a 3rd, a 2nd, and a kindergartner. I have 1 kid down at the community school. And I cannot volunteer there at all because I'm not vaccinated, although I've had COVID, so I have natural immunity. My youngest, 6 years old, has been in a mask for his entire educational experience, including preschool. 1/3 of his life, just to get some perspective. I have hearing loss and I lip read, so I understand the challenges for children who have hearing loss and try to learn at the same time. It's very, very difficult. The CDC guidance is that over 90% of the US population can drop masks from March 4th, 2022 in the US News and World Report. March 12th, Washington State will no longer require people to wear masks in K-12 schools. Why would even it be a consideration that students will still do this if schools have followed the state standards closely? It works when it works for the people in charge. If this is the case, then it throws into question the original policy to begin with, meaning the people in charge know best whether scientists or not, unless the scientists agree. I'm grateful and excited for my kids who incidentally jumped up and down cheering when I told them that the mask mandates were being dropped to see what the smiles looked like from their friends, how people will include them again, and how they will be able to breathe freely. Please do not consider extending the mask mandates beyond March 12th. Second, the vax mandates. Last board meeting, to the gentleman who brought up how excited he was to sign his child up for kindergarten, I too was excited. I'm a teacher and I was thrilled to get my children into school. I was also excited for me because I want to go back to teaching. I've been out for 10 years and I'm super excited to do it. But we have autoimmune deficiency in our family. We have autoimmune disease, and this vaccine shows that it has a very negative impact on a lot of people with autoimmune diseases. Whether you believe in vaccine injury or not is up to you, but I know that my family has been negatively affected by this vaccine. I will not take the risk of being unable to care for my children for what the CDC called an experimental treatment. I've been excluded from the schools at all levels. My daughter's whole class had to stay home from school due to her teacher's absence who had COVID. But I had natural immunity because I had just had it. And I could be a substitute for that classroom because I'm actually a substitute in the Lake Washington School District, but I can't go in and teach. I've been on the PTA at our schools for 4 years and on the board for 2 of those years. I've organized events. I've been the legislative advocate for our school. I've been on every school event that we have had since I have been a part of the schools district. And I started Zoom calls for my kindergarten classroom with another parent just so they could continue learning the first year that this happened. I am an involved parent. I care deeply about the education system and I have been deeply involved. I have found ways to volunteer for our school outside of the school, but there are parents who are allowed to go in for events and I cannot because I'm not vaccinated. Though they are up to date on all other vaccines, my children have been bullied because of this push for vaccines. Do you guys remember when HIPAA was a thing? When we actually didn't share health
Ms. Zenz,
information with our
Ms. Zenz,
kids?
if you could just conclude. We're a little
Okay, I
over
will
time.
finish. Thank you. The TAG group meeting for the Bureau of Health talked about Omicron, and they talked about how the vaccine was effective against Omicron, which we know it was not because everyone got it. They are assuming that only Omicron is the future coming of COVID. All of their information was skewed. So please, please, please allow me to make decisions for my family in terms of vaccinations. Thank you. And I really thank you for your service.
The final person we have signed up for tonight is Rob Horwitz.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine.
Hi, my name is Rob Horwitz. I have two kids in high school and junior high, and thank you in advance for the opportunity to present. Let's take a moment to consider what we know about COVID and masking. We know COVID poses extremely low risk to children. CDC's own data supports this. We know that at best, masks provide a minimal amount of protection against a respiratory virus like COVID, and that's assuming the right kind of mask, fitted properly, worn consistently, all assumptions that rarely happen in the real world. We know that on a personal level, masking, especially continuous masking, comes with very real physical and mental downsides. To name a few, dirty masks, breathing excess carbon dioxide, especially when you're forced to mask during exercise and play, and days devoid of ever seeing classmates or teachers smile. And we know on a societal level, masking has had serious downsides too. It's contributed to many folks treating others not as people, but as pathogens, othering and demonizing those who hold different opinions, promoting a climate of fear. To summarize, and this is putting it nicely, masking children at school is a non-solution to a non-problem. At this point in our COVID journey, let's pause to ask ourselves, what kind of life lessons do we as adults want to, from this experience, impart to our children? I have 3 suggestions. First, be aware of, but not ruled by, your emotions, especially fear. Second, take ownership for your actions, acknowledge your mistakes, and do your best to correct them. And third, lead by example. So I ask you, please, end the in-school mask mandates permanently, completely, unambiguously. The only mandate should be that everyone be respectful of others' personal decision whether or not to mask. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that is all the televised public comment we have for tonight. I do want to acknowledge that the board received additional written public comment. Because of time, I'm not in a position to read all of that aloud, but that has been compiled and distributed to the board, and it is posted on the district's website under board docs for public viewing. Thank you to everyone who took the time to either write the board or come to our meeting tonight and provide public comment. The next item on the agenda is approval of the March 7, 2022 consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
Moved by Director Stewart, seconded by Director Bleasner, that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Dr. Holman, will you please poll the board?
Absolutely. Director Bleasner?
Yes.
Director Carlson?
Yes.
Director Choi?
Yes.
Vice President Stewart?
Yes.
And President LaLiberty?
Yes. Okay, the motion carries. Dr. Holman, will you please summarize the donations that we have for this meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. Tonight we have over $67,000 of donations coming from our PTAs across the district. Want to continue to thank them for their advocacy for students in Lake Washington, and also the financial resources that help our schools to reach our goals for kids. So thank you for that.
Okay, right on to the non-consent agenda. The first item on the non-consent agenda is regarding a property adjacent to the Resource Center. Dr. Holman, will you please get us started on that.
Yeah, in your board packet tonight, you have a situation recommendation and a resolution for you to consider and potentially take action on tonight. As you know, the district owns and occupies the building that we typically hold our board meetings in, called the L.E. Scar Resource Center, and uses the Resource Center for a variety of school district related purposes and functions. An existing easement agreement permits limited and non-exclusive district parking on approximately 2.01 acre privately owned gravel lot called the parking lot, located immediately adjacent to the Resource Center. The district requires significantly more dedicated and secure parking for continued and future functioning of the Resource Center. The district desires to acquire the parking lot in exchange for the fair market value or just compensation as based on the district's appraisal. On February 7, 2022, the Board of Directors approved resolution number 2323 authorizing acquisition of the parking lot. On February 9, 2022, a written offer was sent to G&I 7 Redmond Development, who is the current owner. On February 18, 2022, the district provided the owner with written notice and published notice in the Seattle Times and the Daily Journal of Commerce, with postings also in the Redmond Reporter regarding the Board of Directors' consideration of final action to authorize condemnation of the parking lot. The board's final action would also authorize district administration to pursue acquisition of the parking lot in lieu of condemnation. Any person desiring to provide comments regarding the proposed final action had opportunity to do so during the public comment of tonight's board meeting. I want to indicate that the board did receive one written comment regarding this property. The attached resolution recognizes the public necessity of the parking lot for the district's continuing school purposes. It also authorizes the district's filing of a petition for condemnation of the parking lot and authorizes district administration to pursue acquisition of the parking lot in lieu of condemnation. One additional note before I ask Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus to provide a brief presentation. When the board is making considerations for the potential purchase of sale or property based on the Open Public Meetings Act, those discussions occur in executive session, and the board has held executive session regarding this property. So Barbara, I'll hand it over to you to provide information to the board.
If I may just ask a quick question.
Yes, absolutely.
You had mentioned a written comment. In the public comments, I could not access an attached letter that it was referenced. And I believe it might have been that letter you're speaking to.
Great. So we'll get that uploaded so the board has that comment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I just thank you, Dr. Holman, and I just want to share some brief information regarding the property so you have a visual of the information. Just a highlight of the site information, and G&I 7 Redmond Development is the current owner of the property. JSH Properties manages the property, and the site is approximately 2.1 acres, but likely will be 1.73 acres after a right-of-way dedication. There is a non-exclusive easement agreement that allows parking for 17 Lake Washington School District vehicles. As Dr. Holman said, the district would require significantly more dedicated long-term parking, and securing exclusive use would allow for contiguous parking for Resource Center staff, parents, and visitors. This is a map, an overview of the site. So you can see from this map, the Resource Center is at the bottom left of the pictures. The parking lot is adjacent to the north. So access to other non-reserved parking throughout town center is more often than not insufficient for the functioning of the resource center. Timeline and next steps. At the board meeting on February 7th, the board took action approving, these should all be 2022. I guess I forgot what year we were in. So at the board meeting on February 7th, 2022, the board took action approving authorization to make an offer. On February 9th, a written offer was sent to the owner, and the owner formally rejected that offer. On February 18th, the owner was notified of the planned consideration of final action and authorization of condemnation. Notices were published in the Seattle Times and Daily Journal of Commerce. And on March 7th, which is tonight, the board will consider action of condemnation. And just the term final action is a required term per the relevant statutory authority. As Dr. Holman mentioned, we did receive a comment letter by the owner, and we will certainly reach out to the owners to discuss any proposals that they may have that may work for the district's public purpose. The district will continue to pursue a mutual agreement. The board's action tonight will allow the district to pursue all available alternatives as needed to address our critical need in a timely manner. So that concludes. I will stop presenting that.
Okay, so recognizing that we've had discussions on this already at our executive session, I will now entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2330 and resolve the need to acquire the parking lot for continued functioning and operation of the resource center for school purposes and as a public use in the best interest of the public, and to authorize the superintendent or his designee to take all actions necessary to condemn or acquire in lieu of condemnation the parking lot for the appraised just compensation.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Stewart, seconded by Director Carlson, that we that the board move as I just presented. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Will all those in favor of the motion as presented, that is to adopt resolution inclusive of adopting resolution 2330 and everything else that I included in the motion, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is unanimous. All right. Dr. Holman, did we tackle that appropriately? Just want to make sure that we covered everything there.
Yes. Were there any abstentions?
Yes, I would have been an abstention on that.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. And I guess so let me just, before I move on, let me reflect that, make sure the record's reflected clearly. There were 4 yeas and 1 abstention, and the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing regarding director district boundaries and the proposed change to operational governance policy 1. Dr. Holman, can you please get us started?
Yes. As the board knows, after the census, the board is required to review the director districts. Those are the boundaries of which the 5 directors in Lake Washington School District must reside. And so the situation recommendation in your board packet states that a proposed change to the operational governance policy OGP 1, school board legal status and director districts, has been drafted to comply with RCW 28A 343040 and RCW 29A 76010. Those copies are in your board packet as well, showing the adjusted map, and also the policy language provides the legal description for the boundary of those of the director districts. These RCWs require each municipality to redistrict to ensure equitable geographic representation after every 10-year census. Since the last realignment of the director district boundaries in 2001, there's been substantial shift in population growth. Currently, our director boundaries vary in population from a low of 38,389 in District 1 to 46,864 in District 5. So in your packet, you'll see the proposed changes that were developed by Sammamish Data Systems that the board reviewed in a study session. The board had questions. We provided response to the data request of the board, and that fulfilled the board's questions. Sammamish Data Systems is a firm specializing in demographic and mapping systems. Their proposed changes provided an equitable geographic representation for the new proposed director districts. On February 15, 2022, a press release was issued and announced the opportunity for public comment regarding the proposed changes. Maps of the current and proposed changes have been posted on the district's website. An overview of the proposed changes will be presented at the board meeting tonight. And so again, I just want to recognize that in your board packet that you have OGP-01, which does provide the legal description consistent with the proposed maps. These changes would balance the direct district population so that all 5 districts would have approximately 42,962 residents. Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus, I believe you have a presentation for the board.
I do. I will share that, and all right, hold on. It was hiding in my list between all the other PowerPoints. All right, so good evening, and this is a similar presentation that I have shared at a previous study session, so I will go over some slides tonight to go over the process. The first couple slides are reviewing the RCW that brings us here tonight. It is the responsibility of each school district board of directors to prepare for the division or redivision of the district into director districts no later than 8 months after the receipt of the federal decennial census data. So it is also the responsibility, again, to after redistricting based on the most recent decennial census data and no later than 8 months. So again, different RCWs, same requirement. The plan shall be consistent with the following criteria. The director district shall be equal in population, and each district shall be as compact as possible, shall consist of geographically contiguous areas. The population data may not be used for purposes of favoring or disfavoring any racial group. To the extent feasible, district boundaries shall coincide with existing recognized natural boundaries and shall, to the extent possible, preserve existing communities of related and mutual interest. During the adoption of the plan, the district shall ensure full and reasonable public notice of its actions as provided and shall hold at least one public hearing, which we are doing tonight. And that hearing should be at least 1 week before adoption of the final plan. Because of the delay of the census, the every 10-year census, there was a bill passed by the legislature to set new deadlines for local redistricting. So the deadline was extended, and we have until November 15th, 2022 to formally adopt the redistricting plan. So again, part of our board governance policy, OGP 01, is again repeating some of those legal requirements to establish the boundaries. And OGP 01 contains the legal description of those boundaries. So the director district boundaries, I just want to make sure our community is aware of what they do, what the boundary changes do, and what they do not do. The director district boundaries do not impact school attendance boundaries. So it does not impact the school your child attends. It does not impact voting for all directors. All our directors are elected at large. It does not impact directors' communications with constituents. It does impact geographical representation of the school, of our school board candidates, and it impacts where candidates must live in order to run for a specific director seat. So the timeline that has been followed for this redistricting, in October, Sammamish Data Systems reviewed our census data. They kind of did phase 1, and as expected, our population did shift, and so they then went into phase 2 and created a draft of a director district in November. We shared that draft with the board in January of 2022. And in February, at the end of February, we issued the press release and posted information about the changes on our website. And then we're here tonight at the board meeting, and we'll have the public hearing. And then at the end of March, the second board meeting in March, we will have the first reading of the OGP policy. And then we will have a second reading in April, and the board will take action. And then we have a final deadline of November 15th to adopt the director districts. Again, but we anticipate taking board action in April. So just this is a picture of the current director boundaries that were set in 2011. And based on those boundaries, the population in each of those director districts, you can see, ranged from a range of 38,389 to 46,864. So we needed to change the boundaries in order to balance those populations. And so this is a map of the proposed director district boundaries. And so at the left, let me get my pointer here. This area in pink was moved below the line, was moved from Director District 2 to Director District 1. The areas here were moved from Director District 3 in the purple to Director District 2 in the brown. This area along Willows was moved from Director District 5 to Director District 3. And then there's a tiny area around Marymore that was moved from Director District 4 to 2. So it went from yellow to brown. And then this area around Marymore went from Director District 2 to 4. So those are the changes. And this, with those changes, the population will be balanced to an average of 42,962 residents in each director district. So as I mentioned, our next steps, we published the press release announcing the public hearing tonight and posted that on our website. Tonight I'm presenting the information. We will hold the public hearing at the March 28th meeting. We will have the first reading of the policy. Again, the policy is included in tonight's board packet. And then on April 18th, we will have the second reading and board action. So that concludes my presentation. I will go ahead and stop sharing, and then time for board questions or discussion.
Any questions tonight?
I had a quick follow-up from our study session. I believe we asked if it was possible to get the demographic impacts. Was that ever provided? Did I miss that?
It was shared on February 10th with the board. So we can get another copy to you.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Do you want to say sort of what the outcomes of that information provided?
Yeah, the population data, I mean, it did not, the changes in the director districts did not favor or disfavor any racial group. So it did not have a significant change on the distribution of that.
Director Carlson?
Yeah, so I thank you for the summary again. And this is something where it's now happened twice in my tenure. And I feel like is there a way we can leave just a note for 10 years down the road? Because the criteria that are out there include, district boundaries coincide with existing recognized natural boundaries and preserve existing communities of related. As a board, I wouldn't mind leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that says, and to the best possible, don't unseat any sitting directors. That's not happening this time, but if a director lived in one of those regions that switched from one to another, they wouldn't be able to run for the next cycle. They'd be... Anyway, it's just something for the future. It's not today's problem, but it's something that we could actually put in as a criterion.
I disagree with Director Carlson. I don't think that should be a criteria. It's not important to me at all.
And I would start
for 10 years in the future. This is my message to 10 years in the future. It's not important. On March 7, 2022, that was not important to me today.
And I would agree with that it is not a criteria that should be utilized because there are mechanisms in which to address that should that occur as you create those boundaries.
Which are?
Basically how either you can run again for the district in which you are, you get to complete your term. There's lots of options on how you handle it. So
if there were the 5 of us and we wound up living in 4 districts, then one of us could try to unseat one of the others. Yep. I really think that's a terrible idea, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be in law.
All right. Sounds fun to me. Okay, so no action is being taken tonight. Do we need to formally open? I know we published it. Do we need to open the public hearing? Do I need to say those words?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I thought. The public hearing on the changes to director district boundaries is now open. It is open until March 28. Is that right? Do I have that correct? Okay. And those interested in providing comment on that can email the board or Teresa Harding. Is that for those, assuming there are interested parties, how should they document their comment?
They would request to speak the same way they do for public comment.
Okay, great. And I assume we are also accepting written public comment?
Correct.
Okay, and email Teresa Harding at tharding@lwsd.org if you wish to do that. And then in addition, if you wish to provide televised comment on the director district boundaries, you may do so on March 28th. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the monitoring report for OE7 asset protection. Dr. Holman, can you give us a quick presentation on that?
Absolutely. And so operational expectation 7 is presented tonight for monitoring. Asset protection states that the superintendent will assure that all district assets are adequately protected, properly maintained, appropriately used, and not placed under undue risk. And so tonight, this monitoring report presents evidence of compliance in all 7 areas designated for the maintenance and protection of district assets. For the 2021 school year, all assets were adequately protected and maintained through established procedures and in alignment with required timelines. Tonight, we present this to you as in compliance.
Great. Any board member, any questions on anything that are in the OE7 monitoring report? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. I will now entertain a motion to approve the OE7 monitoring report as presented, which is in compliance.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
I think Director Bleasner won that one. Moved by Director Carlson, seconded by Director Bleasner, that we approve the OE7 monitoring report as presented, which is in compliance. Any discussion from anyone on the board?
Just a quick thank you for the report and filling that out and having some very clear indicators and those components being very clearly defined. So thank you.
Any other board comment? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by voting aye.
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 Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes, and that one was unanimous. It's hard on, good catch earlier, it's hard on Zoom to hear everyone trying to read lips, sort of. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a monitoring report for results 2. Dr. Holman.
Yes, and so a couple weeks ago, we brought to you results 1. Tonight, we're bringing you results 2. And this really is an update to the monitoring that we did in or earlier this school year. And so as the board is aware, the Smarter Balanced assessment that typically happens in spring occurred in October this year. And so Associate Superintendent Mike Van Orden is here to present information and share some of the results regarding results 2 and our monitoring of that. Mike?
Thanks, and you can see the presentation okay. So as Dr. Holman mentioned, that the update tonight really is around our state assessment results. And if you recall, results 2 has a number of other indicators, including things like course taking and grades and our FastBridge assessment. So really tonight, the focus is on the Smarter Balanced assessment and Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science, which measures student performance in these 3 areas: literacy and language, mathematical reasoning, and practices in science. So those are 3 of our monitoring areas of 7. Also, and I think you're aware, the Smarter Balanced assessment and the Washington Comprehensive Assessment were different this year. And so just some considerations and key points before we share the data with you. As I mentioned, or as Dr. Holman mentioned, the assessment was administered in the fall this year as opposed to the spring. Just the timing of the assessment itself can create differences in how students perform. So it's important to note that, for example, on our current 9th graders took the 8th grade assessment. And so what you'll see tonight is we'll see 8th grade results, but those were taken by 9th grade students. And again, just for some context, those 9th grade students were in a different school in the fall, 3 to 4 months separated from learning the content. And those factors influence student performance. And so we just want to make sure that people are aware that the assessment results need to be interpreted knowing the context in which they were administered. The other thing to know is the assessment itself was slightly different. It was a shorter assessment this year. There was no written components or explanation of responses, which again can influence how students perform on the assessment. Some cases maybe a little better, in some cases not. And so again, we have to be very cautious about using the data from this year's administration of the Smarter Balanced Assessment with prior years, because it's just a very different assessment. That being said, there are some things that we can consider as we're using it. One, we know that students were in a remote environment, and so this is a measure of how learning took place or didn't take place in that environment. Also, we are seeing some similar patterns with the Smarter Balanced and WCAS results that we see in our other areas, which allows us to do some verification of those other areas. The trends are similar. And at the same time, it's important to note that there were some differences. So if you recall from our R2 report in October, there were some areas that showed some promise and some growth. And what you'll see in the Smarter Balanced and WCAS results is that the results are pretty significantly lower than they are in prior years. Director Choi, did you have a question?
Yeah, did we know if those considerations were taken into account when they were giving the assessment or when the assessment was created? Like, did they try to account for any of that?
Honestly, what we're hearing from OSPI and Tim Krieger, our Director of Assessments, here as well, so he can add more detail if I'm missing something. But yes, there was an acknowledgement that the assessment was different. Part of this was a federal accountability requirement, and so we did give the assessment. And at the same time, I think there was from Washington State an acknowledgement that it was just a very different test. And so, like I'm doing tonight, a lot of caveats and cautions. At the same time, there's information that's useful to us that we'll talk a little bit more about. But Tim, did I miss anything? Thanks. So wanted to provide you with just a high-level overview of the data. This is also in the monitoring report update that you received, I believe, last Thursday. And the first time I think we all looked at this, and not only in Lake Washington but across the state, I think there was some alarm at the results, because almost in every content area at every grade level we saw drops in performance. And again, even recognizing all of the cautions that I shared with you, those were concerning. And we are still trying to tease out how much of that was a result of the conditions in which students were learning and how much of it was a result of the assessment being different. And so you can see across the board, we were below target in pretty much for every group and by grade level. A couple things to note, though, in this data. You will see that our performance in relation to other districts in our region, and we use comparison districts, was typically higher. And so that's something to note. That's just a piece of information that allows us to use this data. And so again, also it's a recognition that other districts were probably also in a similar place in terms of their performance declining over the time that between the last time we gave the assessment and this year. In most cases for ELA and grades 3, 5, and 8, we were the second highest performing, typically right behind Mercer Island. And then in a few cases we were second or third, just based on other districts. So that information, the comparison district data, is in the report that you received on Thursday as well. Again, just one piece of information to recognize that this was a unique assessment this year. The other thing to note on this, as you'll see for 10th grade, not quite the same pattern. I have an interpretation of that. It may or may not be correct, but again, this was a 10th grade assessment, but 11th graders were taking it. Many of our 11th graders have already met graduation requirements, including now what's called a pathway requirement, which could be Smarter Balanced Assessment, but could also be other things. There are also 11th graders who are a little more savvy, recognizing that this may not be a graduation requirement for them. And so there may be some motivation factoring into the high school results, just savvy students that recognize that I don't need this test. And just like years ago when we first started having state assessments and they weren't a graduation requirement, the scores were pretty low. And then as soon as it became a graduation requirement, scores suddenly just increased. And so I think that's part of it. That's not to say that there's still not work that we have to do, and we'll talk about this in this area as well. Similar for math. And again, concerning when you first look at it, but again, in relation to comparison districts, and the amount we fell in relation to comparison districts, I think given the unique conditions of the assessment, there's just some wondering is how much of that's the assessment, how much of it is the experience that students had last year. But again, our performance in relation to our neighboring districts was relatively high. And again, at the high school level, could be some motivation, but also we don't want to completely say that's the only factor that could be contributing. Science was a little bit different. We had some pretty significant performance for a couple grade levels and a couple groups in science. And in fact, comparable to even before COVID. There's, again, probably a lot of factors at play there. One could be the assessment itself might have been just a lower bar than ELA and math. It could be that our teachers are doing a great job, but I think we also have to be very careful of, if we're going to say that the assessment results when things weren't working very well were probably a result of the assessment, we should probably also factor in that, when we're performing better than we thought on this unique year, that might also be a function of the assessment. So again, we have to be careful and not reading too much into these, but again, our performance in science in a number of areas was the highest performing in the state of Washington. And again, probably some of that is due to the hard work our teachers are doing, but we know our ELA and math teachers were also working hard, and so we have to take all those into account. So I think the big question that folks have after this is, what do you do with this information? What are the takeaways? For us, again, it's really important, I can't overemphasize this, that caution should be used when comparing to prior years. I don't think this would be a good time to say, well, we're on a downward trend and we need to completely change course. That being said, we also know that learning was very different last year, and there's probably some work we have to do to get kids back to a place that they would have been had we not experienced COVID. Again, as I mentioned earlier, our overall performance was high relative to this, definitely in relation to the state, but also in relation to our neighboring districts. Also, this is somewhat a point of verification for our other assessments we have where we see similar trends. So even though the assessment was different this year, we do see similar patterns, which again indicate to us that there's still work to do for many of our groups of students in the district. And so we can use that Smarter Balanced Assessment as one point of information, but not the only point of information. So when we hold up Smarter Balanced Assessment results for English Language Arts and our FastBridge literacy and our work that our teachers are doing in their classrooms, when you look at all three of those and you still see the same pattern, that does give you some information that's actionable. The other thing to note, and we are seeing this, Tim Krieger did pull this out of the data for us. You may recall, we have new what are called graduation pathways in Washington State that replaced the state assessment as the only way that students would meet that threshold for graduation. Now there's a whole series of things. Smarter Balanced Assessment is one of those, but also students can take a sequence of CTE courses to meet the pathway option. They can take other assessments like SAT or ACT or the Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery. So there's other ways that students can meet the assessment. That being said, we have a higher number of students that have not yet met the graduation pathway requirements in the class of 2022 and the class of 2023. And so we know for some of those students, given an opportunity to meet standard on the Smarter Balanced Assessment will be one of the ways that they get across the line for graduation. And so for students that maybe were scoring just a little bit below standard on ELA and math, that maybe retaking the Smarter Balanced Assessment would be a good option for them. And so having this data will be something that will be useful to us. We're also working with other pathway options as well, but this is one piece of information that we are using to help us make sure kids graduate. In addition, for class of 2022, there is still the state waiver option for pathways, but for the class of 2023, there currently isn't. So we are working with our principals and counselors on our class of 2023 to make sure that there's some options, including for students who didn't meet Smarter Balanced Assessment. And then finally, we recognize that, there was COVID, there was, the assessments aren't the same as they are in the past. And we did see growth in some of those areas, but all of that being said, the results still aren't where we want. And so as with R2, as we presented in October, our assertion hasn't changed that we still are only partially achieving R2. We do have some groups, including our all group and some of our subgroups that are performing on target, but a large number that aren't. And so we continue to say that this area is in partial compliance, or we're partially achieving R2. And I think, yes, I'm sorry. One last thing, and we shared some of this in the study session tonight, but then the next question is, okay, so you've got now the Smarter Balanced Assessment, but all the other indicators in R2. And so as we shared in October and tonight in the study session, some of the areas we're working on to address those are related to MTSS, our inclusionary practices and equity, and that comes with professional learning and systems that we're building up. And then as I was sharing in the study session tonight as well, as we're building MTSS, the structures that live within that, the instructional strategies, the interventions we use, the professional learning we use are still in play, and we need to make sure that we are, for example, working on literacy, because that was an area where we didn't see the growth that we would typically see. So making sure we're providing professional learning around literacy, making sure we're providing evidence-based interventions, and having people really think through how do you do small group instruction. Areas like that are really important. We have new math curriculum, as you know, as we've shared, new social studies curriculum. So there's a lot of work that we're doing to make sure that we continue to attend to how students are doing. And we know that there was a difference during COVID that we're having to attend to as well. And so we believe that these strategies will help us to continue to support students as we emerge from the conditions in which we've been. So I think that is officially the end of the presentation. Tim, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add that maybe I missed.
No, I think actually the only thing I'd add on that grade 10 data, I'd say I think it was 64% of 10th graders had passed the assessment. If you take out the students that did not take the assessment, 84%. So there's a 20% difference there. So we had a lot of refusals. So I think that grade 10, you had said it, but I just want to reiterate that grade 10 data is a little bit unusual because of the high refusals.
Okay.
And I would say it's not necessarily, they met another pathway. So they just essentially didn't take the assessment because they missed their federal accountability year. So they weren't really required to take it.
Somehow that it hadn't triggered in my head until you just said those words. I just want to make sure I heard it right. A student who elects not to take the exam, I think the term of art is a refusal. It is as if they failed. It's as if they failed to achieve standards. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to look at it. The state does count them as not proficient because we don't know if they are proficient.
Sure.
We have added, so typically in our non-10th grade grades, so like grade 3 through 8, we see between maybe like a 1 to 2% refusal rate in any given year. We have added on your display for assessments in SBA, you can actually, there's a little button at the top to say remove untested, so that you can actually see the results of those that actually tested. So you can see it both ways. We do, for our board reporting, align with the OSPI standards of like, if you didn't take the test, it is a non-proficient score. I don't anticipate that grade 10 20% difference happening this next year because most of our grade 10 students are going to take it because that's their first opportunity to meet the graduation pathway.
Okay, so I'm going to make you try to prognosticate the future right now. What percentage should we expect to see elect not to take it in the fall?
So I think we're going to be back to a normal refusal rate in the spring. There won't be fall testing moving forward. So we'll be back to our spring cycle, and I anticipate just at every grade level, including 10, probably like a 1 to 3% refusal rate. And a lot of those refusals aren't necessarily refusing to test. It could be absences. We call them all refusals for some reason or other. So they basically just didn't take the test. And then we will have fall testing, but those are just for makeups for grade 11 and 12 students. We have to allow the grade 11, 12 students 2 times a year to pass the test if they want to.
Okay.
So we'll be back on a regular cycle.
Director Carlson, sorry, Mike, did you concluded the presentation, right? Okay, great. So we'll open up the questions now on the presentation of the monitoring report. Director Carlson.
Great, thank you. So I don't know if if it's easy for you to pull up table 2 from the report. Basically, it's the third grade results I wanted to take a peek at, or mention something that I noticed that makes me a little nervous. So table 2 would be the third grade ELA Smarter Balanced Assessment. So that's the top left corner. And here, what was interesting to me, I mean, I take all of the caveats. They are legitimate caveats. This is an extraordinary, weird year, and one could even, I mean, I am naturally a glass half full kind of guy, and the fact that we only lost a few percentage points in 2020 blows my mind. But the one thing in this table that I noticed that causes me a little bit of concern is the group that has the greatest loss, if you look at the 4-year trend as a negative number, is our low-income students, and this is in third grade. ELA being a critical year in third grade, and what was interesting to me is that this exact pattern where the greatest loss was, it's the low-income gap grew this year relative to previous years for low-income students, and it's actually mirrored in the math ELA, the math SBA as well. That's the greatest growth in our gap for the third graders, and so these are the foundational years early in the kids' education. This is a foundation from which one needs to build, and to see minus 4.8 there for low income as by far the greatest loss for any given group relative to previous data. I'm not saying that I care about the magnitude of the loss. I care about the fact that this group has the greatest trend relative to everyone else. And have we got specific, I mean, I know MTSS is supposed to wrap around for these kids, but that's also in this process of implementation. Have we got interventions that are currently being applied to help these kids so that they can continue to succeed without having a faulty foundation?
Yes, and part of it I think I mentioned tonight, literacy, particularly in the primary grades, so grades K, 1, and 2, we know that if you can really establish a strong foundation in those grades, it really pays dividends down the road. And that doesn't mean you don't intervene for reading at any grade level if a student needs it, but early literacy we just know is foundational because it gives you access to other content areas. We also know that, starting about third grade, is when students really, their math reasoning kind of starts to blossom, and that's a real golden opportunity there. So we have some early warning indicators that say, look, you've got to start attending to this because this has downstream implications for these groups of students. So the value of the FastBridge assessment that we've shared is it's allowing us to quickly identify where kids need support and intervention, particularly in those younger grades, but all the way through grade 8. And then, as I mentioned earlier tonight, Kelly Pease has been working on outlining very clearly what are the approaches, the interventions, and the support to use. And then, as you all know, we also have what we call safety net teachers who are essentially interventionists who work with students. So we've been very intentional about literacy, and then we have new math curriculum, so there's been training for that this year. And Kelly is already queuing up training and supports for next year, which include kind of a foundational literacy refresh and support for teachers who are incoming to our system, who are new to really learn literacy skills. So we're recognizing like we've got to put some time and energy into that, and that's part of MTSS, but it also is just a high need. And again, having that district level data, even though we have SBA as kind of a confirmation, the district level data actually allows us to drill down and provide very specific support to individual students.
Right. And so have we had any increase in resources for safety net? Because I see that as very critical to this group.
Yes,
and the same number of safety nets.
I think the other important part, though, is that remember we talked about core instruction being so critical, and we know that direct, explicit phonetic and phonics-based instruction is really important. And general education teachers as well can do small group instruction. And so part of the work, we haven't necessarily had to do that as much or to as great an extent in the past because many of our students come in very competent in reading already. Now we're seeing more students who struggle with reading. And so we're really working with our teachers to think about maybe instruction a little bit differently than they've had to in the past, where there's more small group instruction. So yes, interventionists, but you can't necessarily depend on an interventionist to completely address this. It has to be general education teachers first and at the front, doing small group instruction, core, and then interventionist as needed. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question before I go. Does anyone else want to jump in before me? Okay, I'll start talking then. This question for, I guess, Tim and Mike. So I understand that the assessment that was offered that we're now comparing is that we can't use it for comparison purposes, is what we're basically being told, to prior years. Is the assessment that's going to be offered in this spring, are we gonna have the same problem, or is it now, or can we going forward compare it to prior years, or will we be able to?
I'll let Tim answer and see if I'm right.
So I would say we can compare, like, we just have caution. So the fall data gives us some information. We just can't, it's not like apples to apples. That being said, the spring test will be back to the regular test that we've seen in the past. There's one exception to that. They have actually made the test slightly shorter. Based on some of the fall testing, they've actually been able to actually reduce testing length, and they feel like that isn't going to statistically significantly change the results of the test. One thing that they have done, because they've changed the length of the test slightly, is they're not going to be able to give us claim scores that they used to be able to. So we used to be able to get reading, writing, and speaking, listening, even though it was really just listening. We would get those basically like subscores, but we will not be getting those at least for this spring. And they have not necessarily told us yet if that's going to be moving forward. Unfortunately, that's one of the biggest drawbacks to that is a lot of schools used to use that for their school improvement planning. They would actually set goals specifically for reading or writing. And so they won't have that ability either at the student level and or the school level to sort of see how students are doing in those broad areas. So that's something that we're not going to have from the state tests this upcoming spring.
You used a term I'm not familiar with, a claim score. What is that?
Yeah, I would just, I'd say claim and sub-test score are pretty much equivalent. So like you'd have English language arts is the big, that's what you're seeing is the level on English language arts. But we also used to see results for reading, writing, and listening, speaking.
So I want to repeat what I think I heard. That the exam that's going to be offered this spring, at least what we've heard from the state so far, is that while the exam may be different than in prior years, the guidance from the state is that the changes will not alter performance. In other words, basically, I'm trying to get at, Tim, is will we be able to use the data from the spring to judge district performance to prior years?
It's still our state accountability assessment, and it's we anticipate that they will put the results of the spring 2022 results next to the previous spring 2019 results on the Washington State report card. So you'll notice if you go to OSPA's Washington State report card, they do not put the fall 2021 data next to any other years. We did in this report because I think it's helpful to see the context, but we've kind of like given you all these caveats. In the Power BI displays, we've also put it next to other years. But you'll see that OSPI has not done that with the fall results, but we fully anticipate that the spring 2022 results will be put in the same place as the spring 2019 results.
Okay. And I would just add one little bit to that. Some of the variables we couldn't control in terms of student performance this year will be kind of more typical next year. So kids will be with their teacher who they've had for the whole year, closer to the content and the learning that they've had. They're in their home schools. And so those are factors that may have contributed to results this year that won't be there next year. So even though the test will be a little bit different, I think we'll have more confidence that will be more like the 2019 definitely than this year's. And so still cautious. And I think also we've shared before, and Tim can probably confirm this, is, you always have to be cautious with state level assessment data. And so that's something we're always considering. We want to have multiple points of data, and then we look at how they all kind of track together or don't track together.
Director Choi, and then I have another question.
So I had a question regarding kind of next steps. It was mentioned in the monitoring report that there would be options for credit recovery as well as maybe some summer programming options. And I was curious, are those options going to be unique this year compared to different ones that have been offered in the past for students who might need them? Are we doing anything extra to help in this situation? And then how are we ensuring access to these groups of students who need it the most? Like Director Carlson pointed out, it looks like we have specific areas of students that might need it more than others. And are we doing anything to ensure that these options are readily available specifically for them so that they can access it and have what they need to achieve these opportunities?
Yeah, so starting with summer school, our teams are starting to plan that even now, even though we're a few months out. That includes our intervention services department, which also oversees literacy, Kelly Pease. Highly capable programs are part of that planning, special education is part of that planning, and teaching and learning, and then other directors contribute as well. It will be in some ways similar to last summer because we were kind of in a similar boat last summer. We recognized that kids' learning experiences had been markedly different. They were needing additional support. So again, having this data, whether it's Smarter Balance or FastBridge or student grades or pathway completion rates, is data we're going to use to identify students who could benefit from summer programs. And then our counselors and our schools work to actually do direct outreach and communication with families and really encourage kids to participate. And so those programs include everything that you mentioned. So credit recovery, I can retake a class that I didn't pass. And in some cases, there's a competency component to that. So if I can demonstrate competency, I've already completed most of the class, I can use that. There'll be also opportunities for students to take courses that will allow them to stay on track on a certain pathway. There'll be probably courses very specifically related to skills. So English language arts, literacy, math, those areas that, as I mentioned earlier, are foundational. And then in addition, we still anticipate there will still be some opportunities for some enrichment as well, to allow students to maintain education over the time that they're in school. So all that's being planned. And again, it's really a direct outreach. We had a pretty high response rate. In typical years, we might do a lot of pushing out and invitations where we're contacting families, and we might not see a super high turnout, but families have seemed really appreciative and really want to take advantage of the opportunity. So we're in the process right now of starting to map out what the options are, identifying who's teaching, getting our administrators in buildings, and then we start communicating with families so they have early information. And that's everything from just general information about summer options, but also very specific information about their students' performance, so that they can make decisions about summer options. And then moving into larger picture, you mentioned some things like competency or credit recovery. That's something that's built into our normal annual yearly program. And so we are looking at students that might need that. And then I also mentioned earlier that the graduation pathways, which are a series of different ways that students can demonstrate they have the skills and knowledge in these content areas. We are looking at ways to make sure kids are prepared for those if they haven't already met them. So for example, if they didn't meet Smarter Balance, do they retake the Smarter Balanced assessment, and do they need some prep? Or if they're going to meet it through another course, is that course actually accessible to them? So there's quite a bit of work being done, but it's all driven by data, and then we start to map that out and then really push to families.
I guess the other piece that I wasn't necessarily hearing was, are we doing anything unique to address specific obstacles? So for example, transportation for summer school, or I don't know, like sibling childcare. If high school students are expected to watch their younger siblings in the summer and they can't attend summer school.
Some of that's transportation planning. Some of that's also location of where the summer school is located. In addition, we also, transportation is always something we're thinking about, but we also know that some students actually did well with a remote option, and that's not always the case. So that may also be an option for students that would give them a little bit more flexibility. Some of that includes potentially some independent study. That obviously doesn't work for every student, but we do have a profile now of students that were successful with that from last summer, and so we can use that to identify students. So yes, there are a lot of obstacles, but there are different approaches. Some might be transportation, some might be how they access, some might be the location of the site. The competency-based credit was another one I mentioned, where as soon as students have demonstrated competency, they're good to go, so they don't have to do the full window of time. So it really kind of is, like you said, I think it's looking at what the barriers and obstacles are for an individual group, and then trying to figure out ways that would address those.
Thank you.
Sorry, I lost track of the order in which people raised their hands, so I'm just going to do it the order I'm looking at you on my screen.
Director Bleasner.
Okay, Director Bleasner, then Director Stewart, then Director Carlson.
It puts us in order in the, if you bring in participants, it'll show you who raised it.
So a question, so just furthering what Chris had said in regard, when I look at the low income, the subgroup of students who are low income, you do consistently see, even as benchmarking district, we tend to be further down in the benchmarking line as well. So there, I think there is some play in that perhaps we have a little additional support that needs to be occurring there in some fashion. I can't answer it. I can just say it plays across the board, with math really showing it heavily. And perhaps that's access for other students to resources from family sides and different things, as opposed to, and so how do we help to boost that and bring that along? I think your summer school is a piece of that. I think there might be other things. So that was just something that caught me in the data. The other piece that I keep thinking about, this might be for the future as well, is the cohort. And actually, as we look at the spring data, are we thinking about the cohort and the change that occurred within that? Because that, I think, is what we're looking for, the mitigation of the impacts. And I would agree with Chris when he says there were a lot of extenuating circumstances, moving of teachers. We had a lot of shifting from online to hybrid, moving of teachers because of those sorts of things, those logistics. All of that impacts learning, because we know that relationship with staff is so key and critical to it. So get that the drops are not as large as one might have expected, but it is disconcerting that it is very specific subgroups that we see some larger than others. So I think the cohort is what I'd be interested in as we look at spring.
Mm-hmm.
Director Stewart and then Director Carlson.
Yeah. Director Choi brought up an interesting viewpoint that plays into the question I was going to have. The idea that lower income students often have to take care of younger siblings. Summer is also the time that those same students are working hours that are not conducive to summer school. Again, we're offering online options, or we're not offering online options. The trouble is, my concern is too that we kind of slid by the issue of sibling supervision, and we I don't think we even addressed the cost factor for summer school. And I don't know how much of an impact that will have on low-income students. I would imagine it would have a considerable amount. I assume there must be some mechanism already in place, but every time we talk about a mechanism, we say we can't look at the free and reduced lunch by name, so we're out of luck.
So a few things. We actually provided summer school options that were no cost last year for students that were at risk academically.
Okay.
More of our enrichment options, that's where we had our fee-based summer school. Some of that's through Kelly Pease's department. The online, as you mentioned, is another way. And that as I was sharing earlier, there was kind of a profile of a student. And so for some, having a little bit more autonomy and control over the time and not having to come in so that they could flexibly work on their instruction, but also get some connection with a teacher, but also still provide some daycare. So that was an option. But again, online's not perfect for everybody. So I want to just be a little cautious of that. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, we do have school year credit recovery as well. And so for students in the summer are struggling, we do have during the school day, actually, while they're on campus, credit recovery options. So there's multiple factors in there that you don't necessarily have to know the student's lunch status to be able to provide the supports if there are other barriers or obstacles in the way for them.
Okay.
But I think your point too is really important, that we more now probably than ever, we really need to keep an eye out for those barriers and obstacles, as Director Choi was saying as well.
Well, and to mention too, just because they're staying at home and doing it online doesn't mean they're not supervising three younger siblings. And that's
and I think the idea was some of that can be done at a different time. So like I'm supervising between till 4, but then in the evening I could work on my assignments, and then the instructor could look at those asynchronously.
Okay.
Again, not perfect for everybody though.
Director Carlson?
Yeah. So I apologize that this I'm having an in process Eureka around what the heck is going on, because I need to rescind my comment that we didn't lose as much ground as I expected. Can we pull back up the math SBA slide and go to grade 5?
Mm-hmm. It goes over time.
And this is something I do not believe this was anything in any way malign or intentional, but I just realized that I don't think we've ever asked you to tell us how the 4-year trend number is calculated in the report. Because if I'm looking at the written report, and when I look at the grade 5 SBA math graph, so figure 6, the number was 75.9 in 2017, and it's now 60.4. That's a 16-point drop, not a 4-point drop over 4 years. And so this appears to be divided by 4 to give you the amount of drop that we have experienced. Therefore, these are a lot bigger than I had realized. I was interpreting the 4-year trend as how much have we lost in the last 4 years. Multiply that number by 4 to tell you how much we lost relative to 4 years ago. That's more consistent with what I expected. So, okay, now I'm good with that. But it's something that the numbers really are more devastating than I realized. And when we're reporting 4-year trend, my preference would be to report the 4-year change, not the 4-year average per year loss. But either way, to define it very carefully for that column, because I don't think I've ever actually looked at that column and done the math before.
So I would just, we actually have it in the report under the indicators. It'll say how it's calculated. So for example, it'll say basically it's the 4-year trend is calculated by determining the slope of the best fit line for the last 4 years.
Right.
So basically, we're doing a best fit line, and then we're
loss.
doing the trend. So it's kind of like it is sort of over each of the last year, what's the drop? So yeah.
Yeah, so the 4-year trend. Anyway, like I said, I've never actually gone into the details, and thank you for Timothy. I'm glad that's there. It literally needs to be at the bottom of each table, just so that connecting the dots happens. But so yes, I like I said, I needed to rescind my "this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be." This is as bad as I expected. It is a much bigger drop over the last few years, and it's because we've got this outlier. 2020 happened. We have done a very enthusiastic job of trying not to lose too much, but I don't think anybody expected us to maintain parity. So this is more consistent with what I expected in terms of the divot, and to me, it's more imperative to actually look at the data on relative within our groups. It's not about how much we dropped for a given group from 2017 to 20. It's did the gaps get bigger? And it looks like the gaps got substantially bigger, particularly for low income. And anyway, I think Sirius helped back me up on that one, so I won't flog that horse.
I do, and just again, and I think Chris, you were talking about we were in COVID, that impacted learning, that might be reflected. I also just the assessment itself, and I just as someone who wrote assessments for the state of California and has gone through the process, I know there's variability even in good years from year to year. So when you're trying to then shoehorn this assessment into an off-timed assessment, your results are just so I would be very careful to even include this year in the trend. That being said, like the 4 years prior when we actually had assessments, if you start to see that, that's more alarming to me. But I want to be very cautious we don't put too much stake in, like, math at 5th grade could be very, very different than the math at 3rd, even though they're matched to standards and there's calibration happening. You'll still get differences from year to year.
I fully appreciate that. The instrument is there's going to be wiggle room, which is why I don't ever really care about the trend from one year to the next year. It's the bigger picture. I have my fingers tightly crossed that it's not too bad when we get to the end of this year, the next assessment cycle. I predict that we're going to see that there's going to be a long carry through of this, that the non-instrument related losses we're doing our best, but I would be really surprised if we got back to parity that quickly. Anyway, sorry, I just didn't want to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but I also didn't want to be too optimistic in interpreting the data.
I have another question. The FastBridge results that we see, it's what, table 1, those were from, I just wanted the timing of the test. I'm trying to recall. Those were from, well, when were those from, I guess? Spring of 2021, is that right? Okay. That's what I thought, because they were in our last monitor. I just want to double check. They were in our last monitoring report for this that we got in October. So I assume, and they were identical. So I assume that's where they're from.
Yeah,
and that was.
Remember that was the first year we used that assessment district wide. So, and it was in a remote setting, in-person setting. So again, it's yes, and so it's like you're looking at multiple points. Are you seeing similar patterns? But again, we have to be cautious with those results as well.
That doesn't mean right. I just wanted to make sure I had that right. So my memory is and I think maybe I can read the small print. My memory is that's the first time we offered. We've given it to as a district, right? And we will grade 2 students will be taking that same assessment this spring, correct? Okay.
Yeah. The other nice thing though is I think as Siri is mentioning, having a cohort information. So the nice thing about the FastBridge is you can see how they do over the course of the year in relation to where we'd expect them to be at a grade level. And so if that fluctuates from year to year, we do have a little bit more ability to address those needs than just a 1-point SBA score.
Yeah, that's right. I have another comment, but I'll save it for now. Any other questions from anyone else on the board on the report? Okay. I will excuse me. Entertain a motion to approve the R2 monitoring report as presented, which is in partial compliance with the exceptions that are noted in the report.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Director Stewart, seconded by Director Carlson. Any additional board discussion? Director Bleasner? There you are.
Thanks. I just had a few things, and it's going along with a piece that you had just said, Chris. If the 4-year trend, I wonder if we need to look at that indicator so that it's clearer as to what that means. If I don't have that line graph, it actually is very difficult to have to multiply things. I don't think it's as informative in looking at that table. So I think that would be of benefit to consider that in looking at it. And then I would just ask that for the report, if we're in agreement that we do look at the cohort piece, you have the beginning of year and end of year of FastBridge is one, but I would also want to see the grade 2 as they go to the grade 3 assessment, what happens within that, because that might show that growth that comes back. So I think those are some of the, I think this was a tough year in regards to doing this. I think there's value in knowing what we have here. But there definitely is not the progress we would hope in our typical years. And so that there is work to do with that. So I guess those are sort of my comments around that.
I just want to, sorry, I want to follow up on Director Bleasner to make sure what you just said to make sure I heard it right. The cohort, you were interested in cohort data well, could you just restate for me so I can try to wrap my head around what you just said?
There's two pieces of it. I'd be interested in the beginning of year data and the end of year data for our students with FastBridge that we have that capacity of, which we kind of did with Dibbles prior, so very similar there. Then also following a class of concept. How did our second graders and now their third graders, how did they do this year? That's sort of the recovery efforts in some regards where we're able to support those students well in accelerating their learning.
I'm in agreement.
As am I.
Director Carlson.
So I do want to say thank you for trying to be serious and earnest in doing an analysis of something where it was mostly a damage assessment. We knew there is damage. It's what are we going to do about it? And so, yeah, thank you. There are many caveats, but we know that there's work to be done, and we know that there are a lot of people who are working very hard just to get to where we've gotten. So I don't want to dismiss the efforts of teachers to do some extraordinary things over the last couple of years.
Director Choi.
Yeah, I want to echo what Director Carlson just said, but at the same time, I'd also like to be cautious in making the assumptions that the impacts that we're seeing in these assessments are solely because of the conditions of the assessment or kind of these other outliers that we know are impactful. I'm not saying that they didn't impact the results. If anyone can think back to high school, going from 10th grade to 11th grade and then coming back and being asked to remember what you learned last year after a summer off, it makes perfect sense why some of these numbers might be the way that they are. But at the same time, there also could be the situation of the results might actually be significantly worse. And what are we going to do to address that? We can't dismiss the fact that there are these negative trends that potentially could be true trends, which we can't parcel out and we can't say are solely due to the conditions of the assessment either.
I guess two things. First, I'm going to echo what's been said already, but I do want to say it that these numbers are the word I'm searching for here. They made me sad to see, I guess, is really the only way I can describe it. To see such a big drop, and to see not just the drop, but the raw numbers of students meeting standard, it's almost disheartening. I remain optimistic that we will see this reverse in the next year now that we've had students in our buildings for the full academic year. Also, unfortunately, not surprisingly, the biggest drop is across the board for low-income students. And I know that that's something that I appreciated that being flagged in the report, because I know that means it's an area of concern as well for staff and will also then be an area of focus. And it needs to be an area of focus. We know just also anecdotally, the impact of COVID hit hardest on low-income families and their students. So, I don't really know who this is directed at. My second thing is just a gripe. I guess the gripe is if we can't really compare the exam that was given in the spring to what we've seen before, what was given before, or not the spring, sorry, the fall. Thanks, Tim, for correcting when I got my seasons mixed up earlier. The fall to what was given before. What is the point of the exam? I mean, isn't the intent of these state examinations for districts to be able to, and communities be able to judge a performance and hold systems accountable? And if we're offering exams, not we being the collective state, that don't achieve that, what was the point of any of it? And I find it immensely frustrating to see numbers, but also I think I truly believe correctly be told that it's apples to oranges. It's just okay.
Also, two quick responses to that.
Please.
One is, it is still, we have 1 year of data. It's comparing it to others that I think you have to be even more cautious, but you have a year of data, which kind of speaks to some of the other comments. So can you use that still? Like, there's still information within that. The other thing is, it was I believe, a federal requirement. I mean, I think we lobbied to try not to have it for the reasons you mentioned, and we're told no. But Tim, I don't know if I missed anything in there.
That's correct. I mean, we were actually supposed to do it last spring, but we sort of were able to postpone it to the fall, which allowed us actually to probably assess more of our students. But yeah, we actually had to give the spring federal accountability assessment. So it was either last spring or it was approved to be postponed to the fall. And so that was what our state did, is they postponed it to the fall.
Thanks. That's helpful. And I guess, oh, sorry, Dr. Holman.
I was just going to add one more piece. If you recall, last year, Superintendent Reichdahl submitted to the Federal Department of Education a proposal to modify our state accountability program. And really his thinking was for a long-term change, and that was to do a randomized sample of students across the state to measure our state's accountability progress, and then to really work towards better accountability measures that are actually district, school, classroom based, so that schools and teachers can use those results for actual instructional change, as opposed to federal accountability that doesn't provide you typically with enough information about a specific student, because it's an overarching look at the standards. It's not targeting down to really the instructional level. That request was denied by the Department of Education, and we were required to test. And so the decision, as was articulated, was to hold it this October.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for responding to my gripe. I just do want to correct. I think I did overstep a little bit there when I said it. I don't know if I used the word meaningless, but I was popping around in my head. It is not meaningless. This information is helpful. It is, I didn't mean that. If I said it. What's frustrating to me is it is helpful as a board member. It's very helpful to be able to look at trend data. And so, okay. Director Stewart.
Yes, while you're trying to dig yourself out of that hole, I want to, as much as COVID had an impact on the teaching methods and learning of this last 2 years, I caution us to be using it too much as a crutch for performance. That's why I think Chris's look at the longer trend is important, because all of a sudden we're going to blame it on COVID for this year. We can't then down the road say, well, last year they didn't have this year's recovery year. That's going to be. I want to make sure that we look at a longer trend, so we're not constantly going back to saying, well, it's because of COVID. After all, we felt we had some really good results in a lot of classrooms. We had some good results in all those kids taking remote classes that shined because they were the extrovert, they were the introvert in class, and all of a sudden online they could Zoom. Pardon the pun. But let's not try and use that crutch too long. And I don't think you will, but I think that's something we need to be very, very careful of. because it'd be human nature to try and do so. Okay.
I'm going to go again if that's okay. Anyone else on the board with comment before I prattle on more? I try to, in comments on these, focus on the what and less on the how part of it. But I do want to give kudos on one part of the how. When you look at the what, where we do one area where it does, where the data speaks well for the district is in benchmarking to our other neighboring and similar districts. Where, if you look at just large districts that are similar, we're number one in everything. And we're number two if you include Mercer Island, which is a very different school district than Lake Washington School District. So one of my interpretations of this is the reason we've been so successful compared to other districts is because of the effort that we put into having kids back into school last year, and then having kids in the classroom at the beginning of this year as well. And I know that was it was a tremendous amount of work for everyone last year, staff down to teachers. So, that's one of my interpretations of the results. And I just want to say I appreciated all of the hard work that went into that, because I think it did matter. And then similarly, I know how hard everyone has worked, particularly in the last few months, to keep our schools running in person. And I really do expect that we'll see similarly high results compared to other districts for the next round because of that. So, okay. Director Carlson.
Yeah, I just wanted to try and bring it home on a slightly hopeful note, and that is that this is not the first time that any district has faced a massive catastrophe. Hurricanes have hit, wars have happened. This is something that has happened before. The kids can come back. We don't want to pat ourselves on the back for success before we achieve it, but with hard work, it can be done. So I believe that I believe the numbers mean that we have work to do, but I believe that work is achievable. So anyway, again, thank you for this report.
Okay. Dr. Holman?
Just a couple of things. Siri, you asked a question or made a statement that you'd like to have the longitudinal data instead of charts. Was that in the presentation? Because both the charts and the longitudinal data is in the report. The board also has access to the Power BI data displays that provides even more detail than what we would provide in a report. I just want to make sure I understand that comment.
So the challenge with the trend data that's provided in the graphs is it's only for the overall group. It doesn't break it out by the different subgroups. So even when I go to the Power BI and try to do so, I can't always break out the trend lines for what I'm looking for. It doesn't give capacity. So like I can't break it out by race and ethnicity to see how the trend is going over 5 years.
Similar thing. Even if the baselines have changed, we could see gaps getting wider, but we can't see that if we can't see them on the same graph.
Right. It's too much work, and trust me, I've clicked and tried different things, and I'm pretty sure you can create it through Power BI. You can probably add it pretty easily, being able to do multiple choice, but right now a multiple choice adds them together and doesn't graph them separately.
Okay. Tim.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is probably what we've done with graduation rates, where we've had multiple different pages where you're able to see the non and the not non and race, ethnicity, all of them on the same historically. I think that's what I'm hearing that you want for the assessments. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
Yep.
That helps to show that gap very quickly. I will say when Chris sort of started speaking about that, and when you mentioned the slope, that was a per year change. That is actually, I did not think of that either, I'll be honest. And because I would have thought that was the change of delta from 4 years prior to then, not necessarily the slope. My mistake for not reading the indicator. But I think that's a typical thing. So I would think we need to think about how that trend is best in a graph, not a number.
Yeah. So I think, to get specific, if we put it in Power BI, would you also want in the report? I think one of the things once we start adding all of the iterations in the report, you end up, adding 50 figures, which we can do. It just depends on what you want. So
I'm okay with it in Power BI when I can see all the information that way. The challenge is I'm not sure our community has access through Power BI at this point, and that to me would be problematic.
Great. Okay. Thank you. My other comment, I just want to be clear that there are multiple truths that we're talking about tonight. One of those truths is our students are not performing commensurate with their prior performance, and that can't be acceptable for us as a system. Regardless of all of the other truths that we talked about, the testing, oddities, the COVID-19, we still have students that are not performing at a level that is acceptable nor in alignment with our mission and vision for students. And so to me, that's the greatest truth. And I just want to provide an example that demonstrates that is real for us each and every day. When we look at our FastBridge results from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year, we saw very little progress. So what did we do about that? Well, we doubled down with our elementary educators. We're focusing on literacy. We're calling attention to that because we have results in real time that tell us that our students didn't make typical growth. There's all sorts of reasons why. And some of that is students not having been in classroom settings for a year and a half. Behaviors are increased. Like there's all sorts of things going on, but at the end of the day, their academic results aren't playing out the way we want them to, because that's really what's right for kids. And so we respond to data when we see it, but there is also context that I think we are required to bring to the board so that you have a full understanding of the information that you're seeing. And so just a couple things I wanted to comment on, but I do appreciate the discussion tonight.
Director Stewart?
Just one last thing. As we compare ourselves to other districts, whether it's around the state or around the country, I'd really like to see us do a comparison not based on the number of students in that district as much as the economics and the composition of that district. I think that's more of a even scale, if you will. I don't care if Mercer Island has the same composition of race, ethnicity, and income as we do, great. If they're not that close, then to me, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, it's nice to know you're doing better than your neighbors, but I'd like to know what we're doing by comparison to our students' peers, if you will, across the state when it comes to their groupings.
Okay, any other board comment tonight? Okay. First of all, when I entertained the motion earlier, I misspoke. I used the term partial compliance instead of reasonable progress with exceptions noted. And so I just want to say for the record, even though I misspoke, I understood the motion to be that it was reasonable progress with exceptions noted therein. Did I correctly understand the motion even though I misspoke? Okay, I see head nod. So that is the motion that's pending. So the motion.
I'll correct my motion to accept your motion.
Okay. So the motion that's pending is to approve the monitoring report, which is reasonable compliant. I'm sorry, reasonable progress with the exceptions as noted in that report. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, it passes. Thank you, everyone. The next item on our agenda for tonight is the superintendent report, I believe. Yes. Dr. Holman, do you have a superintendent report for tonight?
I do, and as and not a surprise, it really is in alignment with the comments we heard tonight, at least the content. We have worked hard to align our progression through the pandemic with our public health officials, and we've stayed true to that. And the board has seen the communication over the last couple of weeks, and we're continuing to follow public health guidance as we move through the pandemic. And so, as late as last Friday, continued to message our staff and families just in preparation for March 11, knowing that that is the final day of the governor's mask requirement. We also know that King County Public Health will not be issuing a local mask requirement. And so we've been working diligently to make sure that our communication with our staff, our students, our families really does point to some key values of respect, choice, and reasons, because we know that there will be students and staff that choose to mask, and we know that there's going to be students and staff that choose not to mask when we return to school on March 14. And so a couple of the things that we're doing to ensure that our students have the information that they need to be able to express concern, seek support, because we know that there are students that will feel uncomfortable with either of those choices that are present. And so Associate Superintendent Matt Gillingham will provide some additional detail around what we're doing in that regard this week in preparation. But I also want to, before I hand it over to Matt, masking was one of the mitigating measures that we put in place as a school district. And so there's, and I spoke with our district leadership team about this today, there's 3 very specific COVID-related mitigating measures that have served to protect, to keep us safe, and to reduce the spread of the virus over the last 2 years. One of those kind of mid-cycle, and I just want to talk about that one first, and that's the layer of vaccine. We are one of the most vaccinated communities, and I don't have this specific data, but I know in Washington State, we are one of the most vaccinated communities. So my guess is we're probably one of the most vaccinated communities in the country. With adults and students 12 and over, the majority of them, much more than the majority, close to 90 to 95% being fully vaccinated. Our 5 to 11-year-olds being vaccinated at a rate of around 65 to 72%. And so that layer of mitigation is quite robust in our community. We can't take that for granted. And what does that do for us? That allows reduced hospitalization, reduced critical outcomes. And that really is what this is about, is avoiding those severe outcomes. The other thing, the other layer that we're continuing and actually enhancing as we move forward is our testing strategy, ensuring that we have a responsive symptomatic testing strategy, both PCR and rapid antigen, to make sure that those are available for students and staff. And then our ventilation program will continue with our ventilation program for the current future, because we know that an airborne illness such as this, that the ventilation piece was key in our buildings. But there's 2 other measures that really are, for long term. When we think about communicable diseases within our schools, the idea of staying at home when you're sick, It sounds simple, but that is so important for students, staff, visitors. If you are sick, stay home. That is the best way to not bring that onto our campuses. That's COVID-19, but that is other illnesses as well. And the other piece is hand washing and hand hygiene. Well, that's not specific to COVID-19 as we discovered through the pandemic. It is a practice that does keep our students, our staff healthy. It reduces the spread of virus and illness on our campuses. And it just works to keep all of us healthy. So those are mitigating measures that actually do serve great purpose. And as we think about the masking requirement going away as of this Friday and starting on March 12th, this Saturday, there are other measures that are still in place. As of 20 minutes ago, I still have not seen the updated guidance from the Washington State Department of Health that will provide much more clarity for the other mitigating measures that are currently required and in place. But we know that once we get that, we'll continue to work through that. So that's kind of my set. Matt, I know you may have a presentation that you want to share with the board, and so I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. All right, and I'll try not to repeat too much of what Dr. Holman had just shared, but as we know, the statewide mask mandate is ending as of this Friday at 11:59 p.m., so starting March 12th. We will begin putting up new signs in our schools. So for the last couple of years, we've had signs that say mask required. And our students and staff and visitors will see signs that really emphasize respecting the choices of others. And we're going to be working with our students and staff this week and talking about kind of these three themes of choice, reasons, and respect. It's been an interesting transition, and just kind of a quick recap. Most of the time we find out about changes as they're happening. This is one time where there's been a change that was forecast in advance. So on February 17th, the governor announced that the mask changes to indoor mask rules would start on March 21st. We've communicated with our families immediately and begun processing with our leadership team around these changes, and then tried to provide updates at the end of the week, the following week, in terms of what we believed we could anticipate. Last Monday, we found out that the governor was moving up the date for the indoor mask changes. Again, we communicated with our community, and we've had our health and safety work group trying to process communications and what we could anticipate with some guidance, sent out a follow-up communication at the end of the week. As Dr. Holman mentioned, though, the actual formal changes to Department of Health guidelines have not been updated yet, nor have updates to the Department of Labor and Industries. So there are details, and we have, over the past 2 years, we've certainly found that there are details and caveats that we may still yet find as we get a opportunity to review the fine print. And I know I've been refreshing every half hour on the Department of Health's website today, and we'll continue to do so till we get a chance to see them. We do have our health and safety work group queued up to process some of those changes this week. We're really just going to focus on masking. That's a pretty significant change, and so we'll be paying close attention to see if there are any caveats around the masking, and we will be sending out additional communications to our families this week. Additionally, families can expect to be getting communication from their schools directly. Dr. Holman mentioned, there's a lot of layers of protection that are continuing to stay in place. Actually, for our region, we have a 90% vaccination rate amongst all residents ages 5 and older, which is significantly higher than the state average, which I believe is around 73% for that same population. We have been partnering with Health Commons. That's an agency that's been contracted by the Department of Health to get staffing to support. We have testing centers at our comprehensive high schools. And then our supply chain issues on the rapid antigen tests seem to have begun to work themselves out. And so we're soon in a position, we were looking for that March 21st date to be able to provide all of our schools with some supplies of rapid antigen tests that can be sent home for when students or staff are potentially either feeling ill or have been exposed. So. One of the things that we'll be doing, we just sent out tonight to our principals is we're asking that our schools take time to talk with their students about this change. And one of the things is I often get to come to front of the board. One of the key things is we want to recognize that there's strong emotions around wearing masks. We've been wearing masks largely for 2 years, and so this is a change that people are going to feel all sorts of ways about. And so we want our students to have a chance to be able to process that and to recognize that they could be feeling a variety of ways. And then it's an opportunity for them to pause and assess how they're feeling, identify it, and take a moment and use some of their skills and their social emotional management skills that we work through. So we've developed a couple of different slide decks for different ages, and then accompanying notes that our teachers can use this week as they're trying to facilitate these conversations. And we know these conversations are happening. I have 2 teenagers at home. They're having these conversations with their peers. So we want to help provide kind of some structure for those conversations in the classroom. And so kind of coming back to those 3 themes, it's not necessarily a binary choice. Some students and staff are going to wear a mask. Some students are not going to wear a mask. And then there's going to be some folks who are going to wear a mask sometimes or in some places. And so we want to create space and recognizing that they have the choice to do all of these things. There are some exceptions. The governor has not changed or addressed the proclamation regarding vaccination status, and that applies to employees. It applies to contractors, applies to volunteers. And so currently we have an exemption process around that. Masking is a part of that. We will be looking at that and trying to unpack that. But again, there's details with all of these that we do not believe will be addressed. The governor has said that the state will be looking at the proclamation, but they haven't. That's not something that is being addressed in this current change. So. Additionally, that we are also expecting there may be times when people are returning from isolation or quarantine that they may also be required to wear masks. So there's going to be some situations where it's not a choice, but for the most part, we are anticipating that is going to be a choice for the vast majority of our staff and students in the vast majority of situations. Students will see, here's just another example of a sign that will be going up in the school. We've talked with our principals about ways of trying to normalize both mask wearing and not mask wearing and to really create a space that it is about individual choice. And we'll be talking with our kids about there's a variety of reasons, that students may, or staff may want to continue to wear a mask or not wear a mask. And it's really not for any one of us to necessarily pass any sort of judgment as to those reasons, but we want to talk through a variety of those things. And again, just trying to normalize that we're going to all have a wide range of responses around this. There's a little bit younger version of students with their masks.
And we'll finally talk with our students about respect so that we're open to and accept others' choices. We all have a reason for our choices, and to refrain and avoid judgment. And we'll encourage students to talk with trusted adults, which is the term that we use if they have questions or concerns, to talk with their adults. We are anticipating that we'll get that updated guidance, hopefully really soon. And we'll see that they have foreshadowed that a lot of those requirements are going to move to recommendations. And again, it's a fairly lengthy document, so we'll take some time going through that to understand what other, if there's any other kind of impacts of those changes. We do know we're going to continue reporting COVID-19 cases. Working with King County Public Health for that. We're continuing to work on providing access to testing and actually looking at ways in which we can expand that and make that more accessible. And then we also know that people need to stay home when they're sick, and there's other things going around. And so it's just really important that people continue to practice good hygiene and not bring things to school if they're showing symptoms. So kind of wrapping up, key takeaways is that we're moving into a stage where individual rights and decisions regarding masking are going to should be respected. Choose whether or not to wear a mask, not making assumptions around that. And I'll add, we are continuing to make sure that we maintain a supply of KN95 masks. So that if staff or students are wanting to continue masking and needing assistance in trying in getting a high quality mask, we're keeping our infrastructure in place for that. So, thank you. I don't know if there's any questions, Dr. Holman.
Yeah, and the CDC also updated their requirement for masking on school buses. They maintained the requirement for public transportation, but specifically stated that no longer applies to school buses. And so masks will also be optional on school buses. I just want to make sure I'm stating that correctly. Is that right, Matt?
That's my understanding as well. I'd love to see it in the DOH guidance tomorrow, just to confirm.
But that is what the CDC stated, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the initiative that the district is taking to try and help with this transition, addressing people's emotions, anxieties, and giving them an opportunity to discuss it before the change happens, I think is really important. And I really appreciate the effort that you guys are doing to accomplish this in such a short turnaround time from, the announcement to when masks are going to be lifted. So thank you.
Chris?
I just wanted to say thank you for being transparent and consistent about following the guidance of the public health authorities as we have for the last 2 years.
Any other board member questions? Or comment, Director Stewart?
Yes, I'm glad you brought up the ventilation system, because as I recall, when the ventilation guidelines came out, we decided that was a base. That was where you started at. And we exceeded those requirements, as I recall, by at least a full point or two in a small scale. So the fact that folks aren't aware that we've done so be it. But I think that it has to be pointed out that we went beyond the minimum requirement, and that, I think, in large part helped our success as well. And I'm glad you pointed out the ventilation, John. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you both. Hopefully, by the time we wrap up tonight, the guidance will be posted. I just looked as well. It's not yet, so still a few hours left in the day. Okay, The next item on the, I'm sorry, before I go on, any other board member comment or question? Okay, great, thanks. The next item on the agenda is public and community affairs. Director Bleasner, do you have anything to report first?
So just quick, we are in the last week of the legislative session for the short session. Sorry, it's been a long night. So there are on the WASDA website, and I'll forward the insights to you if you haven't got the in session, gives sort of a highlights of sort of the bills that have passed both chambers from our priorities. So the prototypical school formula for social, emotional, physical, social health, that has passed both chambers at this point in time in order to increase that, as well as enrollment stabilization. They're still in concurrency, and so there's still some budget issues that are coming out. Some of the bills that have not gone on are necessary to implement budget, so they could revive as well. But there are other ones that are definitely not going to revive. So there will be more to come as this sort of wraps up. Thanks to everybody who's been actively engaged with texting your representative or calling them. I know that many staff members have been testifying, so a lot of that advocacy work is using to help inform the decisions that are kind of behind closed doors at this point in time, honestly, as they sort of work through the budget pieces and some of these components. So more to come at the next meeting. I don't know, Dr. Holman, if you have anything to add based on what you have been doing, but you're more than welcome to.
You know, maybe the theme of the night is interpret what you hear with caution. We are paying very close attention to how they are implementing the social, emotional, mental, and health piece of the prototypical school model, because depending on how they fund it and the accounting for it, then determines how many staff we're actually able to add. I mean, it's really kind of in the formula process right now, and so it's important to note that if they have an FTE requirement, and so a 1-for-1, for every FTE the state adds, we have local costs that also have to be paid for that FTE. And so that is just something that we have to balance and think about. Anytime the state is thinking about these adds is if, you know, and that's due to contracts and things like that. So I'm excited about it. I'm also optimistically hopeful that they don't tap into local levy dollars for them to be able to accomplish their outcomes and talking points. And so there's some good things coming, but it also could come at a cost to our local levy dollars as they pass these pieces. So, but to Director Bleasner's point, there's some things that are still in the works. At the end of the day, I'm excited at the prospect of being able to add additional positions in those SEL health-related type workspaces. So, but I know we have been active, you know, most weekends lately. Grace Yuan has tapped us on the shoulder to either testify, to email, just to really advocate for, you know, outcomes that are beneficial to all of us across the state.
Thank you.
Great, thank you both. Let's hear, does anyone else have anything else for public and community affairs tonight? Head nods no. Okay, the next item on the agenda is board comment. Any board member comments for tonight? Had many opportunities for comment on agenda items. Any additional comment tonight? Okay. Okay, so upcoming meetings. March 19 through 20 is the extended study session. That's a Saturday and Sunday at the Resource Center. Shoot. John, have we set a time for that to start on Saturday? I just cannot recall sitting here right now. I have in my head 9 a.m.
I believe 8 a.m.
Even better. Even better. Great, 8 a.m. So 8 a.m. on the... Everyone is, for the record, everyone's nodding their heads enthusiastically about 8 a.m. is what's going on. 8 a.m. March 19 is our extended study session will start. We have a jam-packed agenda for that. So we'll start right at 8 and get going and keep the tempo high. And we'll have the agenda out for that soon. Thank you, everyone who, I think everyone provided ideas to have on the agenda. And there's really I'm actually looking forward to it. Maybe not 8 a.m., but I'm looking forward to the weekend. And then we have a board meeting on the 28th with a study session at 5 p.m. followed by a board meeting at 7 p.m. And the location of that meeting will be determined soon. Okay, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the March 7 board meeting.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Carlson, seconded by Director Blesner. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Okay, meeting is adjourned.